We've talked about the stickiness of Homo economicus. You might not have heard about Homo economicus, but the idea that we're self-interested, egotistic, maximizers shouldn't be novel. This is how we work our organizations. This is how we see pretty much the world in most cases. And it's a helpful view, especially if you want to look at something that is universal. If you can ascribe something that we have in common across the globe, it's important to understand the similarities. And there is some truth to Homo economicus, clearly. And it's not the entire truth. In this course, we want to make sure that you have different perspectives. And there's another view on what humans have in common, which is an evolutionary perspective. And it builds on what we've talked about before, these insights about the drives that established and allowed human beings, Homo sapiens, that we are part of, to survive. This evolutionary account with the 4 drives basically says, okay, as a species we wouldn't have survived if we didn't have a different type of brain that would develop over time that would allow us, 1, to be social, fundamentally social, and 2, to think in the abstract and ask the question, why? Australopithecus Homo Habilis were a type of species that could resemble Homo economicus. They have a drive to acquire and a drive to defend. They live on trees. Sometimes they get together whenever it's in their interest to hunt, etc., gain food, or defend themselves from animals. Climbing up a tree, maybe helping each other a little bit to climb up those trees, but pretty much nothing more than that. The whole point of collaboration in this context is to assure your own survival. And that means to have enough food and to have enough security to survive from day to day. If you believe the anthropologists and the evolutionary scientists, this kind of survival mechanism didn't function too well, especially with the kind of climate change that people say occurred about 2 million years ago. And that meant that Australopithecus Homo Habilis would need to move out of trees, forests, etc., where they were pretty much protected from the environment, the sun, etc., and large animals into the savanna, the steppe. There, individual human beings were much more exposed to sun, to rain, to night, to prey animals. And so they didn't survive very well. And only a small minority, small percentage of our species actually survived. They say, scholars say it's about 0.5 to 0.7%. So 99 point something percentage of Homo habilis died, did not survive, because they couldn't collaborate. They couldn't help each other. They were too egotistic. They were too opportunistic. They were too much like Homo economicus. Now understand, we all developed from Homo economicus, so to speak, from Homo habilis. And our species was only able to survive, well, the predecessors, because they learned how to collaborate. If you believe anthropologists, our brain developed quite a bit, and it developed massively because we needed to be able to process the complexity of social relationships, meaning father and mother bonding together, staying together to nurse a child, to protect that child, to protect each other. And so a real big advantage was conferred to people that could live together, protect each other. And this is our ancestor, Homo erectus, they caught fire, they learned how to dominate fire, and when you have fire, what needs to happen? You want to keep it burning. Think about it. How would you keep a fire burning if you're just by yourself? You'll fall asleep, you will not be able to get the wood. So clearly there's an advantage for those that can work together. One brings the wood, one keeps the fire going, then you have rotations in terms of keeping the fire going while others are sleeping, etc. So a team clearly has an advantage over an individual. Fire helps with eating what you can eat and where the energy is going. So if you have cooked meat, you don't need to digest so much. More of the energy can be put into other kind of activities rather than digestion. And many of the anthropologists are saying that what happened is that with that kind of change in food caused by fire, we were able to develop a larger brain. Now, all of these things are not linear. They basically condition each other, because once we were able to get a bigger brain, we needed to collaborate even more, because infants could not be fully gestated in the mother's womb. They had to grow up to be able to be independent within a family. So clearly a nuclear family would outperform another type of family in terms of survival, because they can protect each other. They can raise a kid. There's a mother that keeps nursing the kid. There's a father that gets the food and that maybe protects. So in that sense, Homo erectus became a social species, a fundamentally social species. Those survival chances were improved by the mastery of fire, by the ability to gain and hunt bigger prey together, and by then, as a result, to develop a bigger brain, to become smarter, to develop the nuclear family, but also beyond the family, the tribes. So the biologists, evolutionary biologists, and anthropologists are concluding that tribal bonding, our sociality, is a key to survival. There is an independent drive to bond, as Paul Lawrence says. That was not enough in terms of our survival. There is an independent drive to comprehend that developed from further brain development, because tribal behavior in itself was helpful in an environment that was predictable. When you had changes and shifts, you needed to adapt to it. You needed to innovate. And our further brain growth allowed us to think abstractly, as I said before, to ask the question why, and how we can improve things, how we can come up with solutions. You see this manifestation of this independent drive to comprehend, which made us Homo sapiens. Sapiens means knowing. So Homo erectus, that was a fundamentally social being, became a fundamentally social being that wanted to know. So we created books, we created movies, we created ways and symbol systems that we can call religion that help us understand the world and make sense of it. We also create Sudoku, we create Trivial Pursuit, we create all these kind of games because we have an innate need to understand things. We look at our cell phones all the time because we want to know more information. It's part of our innate survival mechanism, the drive to comprehend. So survival chances are improved by our abstract thinking because that supports innovation. And in a changing environment, that's helpful. It helps us learning by storytelling. And it helps us create shared meaning through religious systems, other meaning systems. We ask the question why we make meaning constantly, because we want to satisfy this independent drive to comprehend, as Paul Lawrence says. This is just to give you a little bit more context of who we are as human beings and how we can look at us as a species, whether we're Chinese, African, Latin American, European, no matter where, we do share this perspective, these independent drives, and this ultimate objective of balance of those four drives, to be happy, to live a flourishing life, to live a life with dignity. Very different from the Homo economicus perspective, and the Homo economicus perspective can be subsumed in that perspective as the independent drive to acquire and the drive to defend. And it's important to understand the drive to bond and the drive to comprehend are independent of this drive to acquire and drive to defend. And that's where we're missing out currently in society, mostly.